Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Perigord, chapters 8 to 10 by Mark Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Halfway through his meal, a familiar voice spoke to Jason from behind. "All on your lonesome," the voice said. Without turning, he knew that it was Hector, and if past experience had taught him anything about this type, he knew he wouldn't be alone. Jason kept his cool, refusing to react or turn. Instead, he picked up his milk and took a sip. A confused Hector looked about at his friends. Jason's reaction wasn't the usual response he received. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he barked. The dining hall went silent. All eyes in the room were now fixed on Jason. "So much for keeping a low profile and a promise to Mom and the Ice Queen," Jason thought solemnly. Jason continued to sip his milk, keeping a bored expression on his face. He waited for Hector to make the first move, which he did, grabbing Jason roughly by the shoulder and turning him in his seat. "Don't ignore me, pissant," Hector growled. Jason looked up, feigning a look of surprise. "Oh, hey, Hector," he said calmly, then pointing to the kid with the acne scarring and plastered nose to Hector's right. "Tiberius, isn't it? How about I call you Tib? I don't know you other three, but if you're friends of Heck and Tibbs, I'm sure you're good dudes." Jason gave them a sarcastic thumbs up. The 5 boys didn't look impressed at all. Tiberius stepped forward. "You think you're pretty fucking funny, don't you? But I know you're just stalling." A predatory smile appeared on his face. At that moment, Jason decided he'd had enough of these jokers. "No, if I were stalling, I would have made a joke about the Domino's pizza complexion you have, but teenage acne is a little obvious, don't you think? Maybe your lack of height would have been a good one, but I'd like to think I can be the bigger person," Jason remarked. Tiberius's smile had faded. The eyes on all 5 boys narrowed. "This is it," Jason thought as he slowly got to his feet. He had a good 5 inches on any of the boys standing before him, and as he stood to full height, Jason let them know it, pushing his broad shoulders out to maximize the effect. He could see it in their eyes. They were unsure. A primal voice growled in his head. "But if you bottom feeders think you can intimidate me with those pipe cleaner arms, you're crazy." Jason shrugged his hoodie off and raised his hands. The sound of his knuckles popping as his hands formed into fists was heard clearly throughout the silent hall. His muscles looked pumped, the veins standing out visibly. Jason wasn't aware of the image he was projecting, but to everyone in the dining room, he looked the epitome of danger. All 5 boys just stood and stared. The best defense is a good offense, Jason thought, lashing out with a jab into the chin of Tiberius, whose eyes rolled back in his head as he dropped where he stood. Jason didn't hesitate, stepping over the unconscious form of Tiberius and striking Hector with a right that sent him reeling, but not down. The other 3 boys rushed Jason, who was able to bring his left knee up into one of the boys, knocking the wind out of him. The other 2 collided with Jason, their momentum taking all 3 to the ground. One of the boys had Jason's right arm pinned, but it was taking all his might to keep him restrained. The other had both hands around Jason's throat. He could feel the boy's nails digging into his flesh. Jason, who had been studying mixed martial arts for the past 2 years, knew it was important not to panic and useless to try and pry the hands from his throat. Instead, he brought his free hand in close and drove his elbow hard and fast into the boy's face. He felt the sickening crunch of the boy's nose under the impact. The boy went back, the fight now out of him. He just wanted to distance himself from Jason. With his arm now free, Jason reached across to the other boy, grabbed his ear and started to pull. The shrill scream that emanated from the boy let Jason know he was doing the right thing. Unlike Jason, the boy released his hold and tried to stop the intense pain on the side of his head, which was the worst thing he could have done. With both arms now free, Jason was able to maneuver himself, facing the boy's back. He positioned the blade of his forearm across the boy's throat, reinforcing it with his other arm, effectively cutting off his air supply. As soon as he felt the boy's struggles weaken, he released his hold, pushing the boy's body aside. Jason was panting heavily. He attempted to get to his feet when he caught movement out of the corner of his eye. He tried to roll away but was too slow, as Hector's foot connected with the side of his head. The force of the blow sent Jason rolling to one side. Despite the ringing in his ears and disoriented vision, he slowly got to his knees, his arms raised in a defensive posture, blood running from his nose and the corner of his right eye. Jason prepared himself for more when a woman's voice rang out through the dining hall. "Stop this instant!" Everyone turned to see Ms. Stonewall striding toward the brawling pair, her face devoid of sympathy. "What the hell is going on here?" Hector was the first to respond. "The new kid started it, Ms.," Hector said sincerely. "Really?" Ms. Stonewall replied. "Mr. Page just decided to attack the 5 of you, for no good reason." She eyed him dubiously. Hector was straightening his shirt. "Who can say, Ms.? From what I've heard, he has a history of this sort of thing," Hector said smugly. "Have a look at my boys here," he said, pointing to Tiberius, who was moaning, and the other boy, coughing and rubbing his throat. It was apparent that Ms. Stonewall was now looking at the situation, with a look in her eyes that plainly said, "Is the school liable?" "Is what Mr. Rope's saying true?" she questioned Jason, now looking uncertain, not knowing how to respond. "Hector's full of shit," a voice called out from the crowd. Everyone turned to see who had spoken up, including Ms. Stonewall, Jason, and Hector. A petite figure stepped from the crowd. Jason recognized her as the goth girl from his English class. Dressed pretty much the same as when he had seen her the day before, her gray army trench coat opened at the front, revealing long, slender legs in charcoal stockings, black shorts, and combat boots. She stood with her hands on her hips, defiantly daring anyone to question her. "Who threw the first punch?" Ms. Stonewall shot back. The goth girl didn't reply. Another girl dressed in pigtails and long, rainbow-colored socks spoke up. "It was the new boy, but he—" Ms. Stonewall cut her off with a steely glare. "That's all I need to know, Ms. Piper." She turned to Hector. "Take your friends to the nurse's station and get checked out." "Yes, Ms.," Hector replied, firing a malicious glance at Jason. Jason's jaw tensed. Ms. Stonewall turned her attention toward him. "You can take yourself to the principal's office. I'll be with you shortly." "What a crock!" the goth girl exclaimed. Mrs. Stonewall spun to face her. "And you, young lady, can take that filthy mouth of yours to afternoon detention. I'm sure I don't need to tell you the time and place," she said sarcastically. Mrs. Stonewall raised her voice so everyone could hear. "If there is nothing else, move away and continue with your lunch," she said, and with that turned and departed the dining hall. Jason looked around, but found the goth girl gone. His face was grim with the realization that his day had gone from bad to worse. Chapter 9. Jason sat outside the principal's office. He had been waiting about 15 minutes and hadn't heard a peep since he arrived. He hoped that was a good sign. A door slammed and Miss Stonewall strode down the hallway toward Jason, an angry expression on her face. "You're a lucky young man, Mr. Page. It seems no permanent damage has been inflicted on the boys you attacked. Our esteemed principal, Mr. Florentine, has a lot on his plate due to some recent vandalism and theft, not to mention a soft spot for your mother. So, you've dodged the suspension bullet." Her words were thick with venom. Jason sighed in relief. "However, I've been instructed to punish you using my own discretion," she said. Jason opened his mouth to respond, and was silenced with a wave of her hand. "I'm not interested in excuses. You made a promise to me and broke it. I don't forget that sort of thing." Jason tensed, awaiting his judgment. 2 weeks detention. "You'll report to the school library 5 minutes after the final bell, not a minute later. You will remain there until 5 o'clock. A wicked smile crossed her face, and she leaned in close, her lips inches from his ear. Jason could smell the faint scent of her perfume, a mixture of vanilla and cinnamon. Despite her direct bluntness and the fact that she evidently disliked him, he couldn't help but feel a strong sexual attraction towards her. Her breath near his ear was driving him crazy. She lingered a little longer. "Don't ever fuck with me again," Ms. Stonewall whispered. This jolted Jason, who struggled to control his reaction, apparently not well enough, as her smile spread wide. She drew back, regarding Jason with her piercing eyes. "I'm glad we understand each other. You can head back to class now." Jason watched her leave, aroused and concerned all at the same time. The final bell sounded, and he made his way quickly to the library, eager not to create any further trouble for himself. He found the area that had been set up for after-school detention. There were other students already seated, some alone, others together chatting. Taking a seat near the back, he waited for the lecture he knew would be coming. The librarian emerged from her office. She was in her early 60s, her gray hair in a bun. She was wearing a light blue dress that was probably deemed conservative 40 years ago, and her half-moon reading glasses were perched on the end of her nose. Jason thought there must be an assembly line somewhere producing women to her exact specifications, because she reminded him of every other librarian he had come across over the years. The librarian introduced herself as Ms. Brewster. "For those who haven't been here before..." Ms. Brewster paused mid-sentence as the door was flung open and the goth girl sauntered in. The librarian regarded her coolly. "How nice of you to join us, Selene. Please take a seat," Ms. Brewster said. Selene ignored the librarian's instruction, leisurely surveying the seating arrangements, her gaze stopping on Jason. The corners of her mouth twitched up slightly into a smile. Selene casually made her way towards Jason, her coat brushing past his chair as she sat down next to him. She leaned back and placed her feet on the chair to her front. She turned her head toward Jason and performed a kissing gesture in his direction, followed by a wink of her eye. Jason's face flushed red as he turned away, evidently embarrassed by her bravado. Ms. Brewster kept her calm, clearly annoyed, but not surprised by Selene's behavior. "As I was saying, for those who haven't been here before, I don't care what you do as long as it's quiet and you remain in your seats. I'll be at the desk catching up on work. Place your hand up if you require my attention. Is that clear?" She took the room's silence as acknowledgement, turned and went about her business. As soon as Miss Brewster was out of earshot, Selene turned to Jason. "As you already heard from old Brewster there, I'm Selene. So how are you enjoying Perigord so far?" Selene asked with a chuckle. Jason smiled despite himself. "I've made better first impressions, that's for sure," he quipped. This was followed by more laughter from Selene. "Those were some pretty slick moves today," Selene said, matter-of-factly. "Where did you learn them?" "I've been taking boxing and a bit of MMA for the past 3 years, mainly for fitness, but for self-defense as well," he replied. "Well, I'd say those lessons were fairly successful," she joked. "And I'd like to say that was my first time," he replied. "You a bad boy," Selene crooned. "Hey, could we change the subject, please? I'm going to be hearing enough of this when I get home," Jason replied tiredly. "Fair enough. Hey, I like your cross," Selene said, pointing to the pendant around his neck. Jason smiled, holding it up for Selene to take a closer look. "It belonged to my great-uncle, I think," Jason said. "You're not sure?" Selene replied. Jason shrugged and explained the circumstances behind its discovery. "In fact, I have the book here if you're interested," Jason asked. Selene nodded and rubbed her hands together. "I'm intrigued," she replied, sitting up in her seat. Jason retrieved the book from his school bag and placed it on the table with a heavy thud. "Whoa, you weren't kidding, were you?" Selene said, eyeing the large tome. "I'm not one for exaggeration," he stated honestly as he opened the book and turned to the first page. Selene looked around as if something should be happening. "Oh, was that it? I was half expecting some kind of demonic chanting to emanate from the netherworld. But this is a bit of a letdown," she said flatly. Jason went to close the book. Well, if you're not interested, he replied dryly. Selene dropped her hand over the top of his, looking him seriously in the eyes. Hey, I was just kidding. You need to get a sense of humor, Rocky, she said, slapping his hand out of the way. After a brief glance inside the book, she turned to Jason. You weren't completely wrong. Some of this writing is definitely in German. I can make out some of the words, but nothing that would prove useful. Jason looked a little deflated as well. He didn't know why, but he had hoped Selene might be able to shed some light on the book's content. Selene could read his reaction and interjected, My grandmother is full on German. If you're interested, we could take the book around one day and let her have a look, Selene offered. I'd appreciate that. Jason gave her a warm smile. Selene returned his smile, displaying a cute pair of dimples, her silver eyes glittering. Then the moment was over. The two of them looked down both, a little embarrassed at how easily they had let their guards down. Jason flipped through some of the pages in the book and cleared his throat. So, what do you do for fun around here? He asked, keen to change the subject. If you're one of the Walking Dead, not too much. Hunting, fishing, getting drunk, she said bitterly, then noticing his reaction. Oh, it's not all that bad, I suppose. The Parthenon Theater shows classic horror movies Friday nights, and old sci-fi movies on Saturday nights. The cheesier, the better is their motto. Really? Jason asked. No, but it should be, Selene joked, and they both laughed. There's also Crow FM, the local radio station. Every night between 10 and 4, the DJ plays his own selection of tunes. So, if you're into something a little different, what are you into at the moment? Jason asked. Selene thought it over. I'm kind of into darkwave, you know. Diary of Dreams, Johnny Hollow. She watched Jason closely, gauging his reaction. I don't mind Johnny Hollow, Jason replied. Really? What's your favorite song? Clearly not believing him. Jason thought it over for a second. I'm kind of fond of Stone Throwers, he admitted. Selene looked impressed. Yeah, I like that one too, she replied. Jason yawned and Selene took it as a sign of boredom. The DJ's a friend of mine, calls himself Beetle, Selene blurted out. Beetle, Jason repeated dubiously. I don't know his real name. He's a cool old dude. Used to be a roadie back in the day for the Stones, The Who, and about a dozen other classic bands. He's got some great stories to tell if you're ever interested, Selene said. Sounds fascinating, Jason nodded. Detention is over. Come and sign your name in the book and you're free to go, Ms. Brewster announced to the group. That's us, Selene said, the pair grabbing their bags and waiting for their turn to sign out. Can I walk you home? Jason asked sheepishly. As much as I appreciate your chivalry, I'll have to sadly decline, Selene said with a smile. I'm meeting my grandmother out front. Maybe next time. Okay, next time, Jason replied lamely. Selene was the first to leave the library, and by the time Jason got outside, there was no sign of her. He checked his watch and realized he was going to be late getting home. Jason zipped up his hoodie and took off home at a fast sprint. Chapter 10. By the time Jason arrived home, the sun was almost gone, and only its faint glow could be seen on the valley horizon. He slowed to a jog as he made his way up the driveway, already dreading the discussion he was sure to have with his mother. Entering the house, Jason noted how quiet it was. He expected a cold greeting, but not this absolute silence. Eventually, he found a note on the kitchen message board. Had a last-minute emergency, dinner is in the fridge. We will talk when I get home. Jason sighed wearily. What did you expect? He said aloud, as he made his way to the fridge. After dinner and a shower, he was reading Great Expectations on his bed when he heard the combi pulling into the driveway. Jason decided not to greet his mother downstairs, instead waiting expectantly for her to appear at his door. 10 minutes later, she didn't disappoint, interrupting him with a clearing of her throat. Helen was standing in Jason's doorway, her arms crossed and looking far from happy. You know that man I had to see this morning. Well, it turns out he's the principal of your school, Mr. Florentine. Lovely man, by the way. Well, there I was, in the middle of delivering a foal, when he received a phone call from the school, telling him that there had been a major fight, Helen said calmly. She paced into his room. You can imagine my surprise and embarrassment to discover that not only is my son involved, but he's the catalyst behind the entire thing. Helen exhaled sharply. Jason tossed the book to one side as he climbed off his bed. It wasn't like that at all, and if you'll give me a second to explain my side of the story, Jason pleaded. Helen threw her hands up. 2 days you've been at school. 2 days, and now this. You promised me. Helen's voice trailed off as her eyes began to tear up. Mom, I'm sorry, Jason said. So am I, Helen replied, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm tired. I suggest we both turn in before we say something we'll regret. Jason didn't respond as Helen turned and walked out. The following morning, he awoke early and quietly let himself out of the house, jogging slowly towards town. Running in the same direction as he had the previous day, he entered Perigord's Central Park, the darkness illuminated by the streetlight. After several minutes, he picked up his pace, now running at a near sprint, his breathing coming easily as he passed several bronze statues and stopping briefly before each. One was the trunk of a large tree with a young boy and girl tying a ribbon at its base, titled, The Disappearance of the Remus Twins. Another, an abnormally tall and gaunt man, dressed in a tattered three-piece suit and bowler hat, his feet bare and arms outstretched, a hideous smile on his lips, looking toward the sky, titled, The Resurrection of Pollux. And finally, a trio of clowns standing under an umbrella, 2 with their heads bowed, and the one to the front holding his hat in his hands, an obviously sad expression on his face, titled, The Exile of the Kyoto Brothers. Jason thought the park's creepiness factor was a definite 9.5 out of 10, but it was also kind of cool. He reached the library and stopped to look up at the building. He noticed a light on. That's dedication for you, he thought, before deciding to turn back. He arrived back home, sprinting hard all the way up the driveway, barely breathing hard, or sweating as he reached the front door. He entered through the rear of the house into a room he had converted into a home gym. Without stopping for a break, he donned his grappling gloves. Selecting a playlist on his iPhone, he closed his eyes for a second as the music flowed out. He opened his eyes and adopted a fighter's stance. Facing a suspended punching bag, Jason started striking the bag slowly at first, concentrating on his technique, and as the song continued, so too did his intensity. He started throwing elbows and knees into the bag. His footwork was a blur as he moved in and out. His strikes came hard and fast. Everywhere the bag moved, Jason was on it. He never let up, giving the bag everything he had. Growling with anger, he pictured Hector and his friends on the end of every strike. After 30 minutes, he gave the bag a break, and discarding his gloves, he started doing burpees. Once he reached 50, he jumped up onto the chin-up bar, keeping his legs straight and raising them horizontally so they were parallel with the ground. He started doing chin-ups, holding them in that position throughout. After he got to 30, he dropped off the bar and turned to find his mother watching him, her eyes wide. Oh my God. I heard you leave for your run well over an hour ago, and I'm pretty certain you haven't taken a break. I could feel the vibrations of your punching all through the house. Concern was evident in Helen's voice. Jason toweled a light sheen of sweat from his face. I didn't mean to wake you. I just needed a quick workout, he replied, grabbing a drink from his sports bottle. You're not breathing hard and barely sweating, Helen said, her voice sounding alarmed. I'd swear you even look bigger. Are you using steroids? Jason's eyes widened. I have one fight, and now I'm some roid monster? His voice raised in exasperation. It's not just one fight, and you know it, she shot back. That's not fair. I'm never going to be one of those types who sits back and takes shit, but I don't go looking for it either, he replied a little angrily. I know, and that's why I love you, but it doesn't stop me worrying, Helen said, her voice ragged with emotion. The pair stared at each other, both realizing the futility of the argument. "And just for the record, I'm not doing drugs. I'm just naturally buff," he said lighthearted. Helen burst out laughing despite herself, and after a moment she looked at her son tiredly. "I know in my heart you're not doing drugs. I'm just concerned. What you just did would be punishing for most people, but you just cruised through it, literally, without breaking a sweat. Promise me you'll be careful and not push yourself too hard. You know they gave me 2 weeks detention, so you really don't have to punish me too," Jason said, trying his best to look adorable. "I think a week of cooking dinner will suffice," Helen sighed, then moved over to give her son a hug. Jason kissed her cheek. "I love you, Mum," he said warmly. "I love you too," Helen replied, then added, "Go and clean up, then you can make us both some breakfast." "For you, anything," Jason replied. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Perigord has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.